Mr. Putin, colleagues, deputies of the State Duma, I am sincerely glad to have the opportunity to speak before you as part of the governmental hour. In the foreign ministry, constructive dialogue with legislators is of great importance because you represent our entire multinational people. You constantly maintain communication with voters, and you receive first-hand information about the concerns of our people and how they feel about what we are doing in the international arena. In December last year, we met with your colleagues from the Federation Council, and yesterday we held a substantive exchange of views with the leaders of the party factions and profile committees of the State Duma, with the participation of Chairman Vyacheslav Viktorovich Volodin. As a result of yesterday's conversation, I hope I will not be rejected. We confirmed our unity in the principled support of the foreign policy course defined by President Putin and outlined the first steps of our cooperation, including on the issues of further development of parliamentary diplomacy and harmonization of the diplomacy of the executive branch, the presidential branch, and the parliamentary branch. Such cooperation and efforts are certainly in high demand in modern conditions. Russia defends its legal rights in the complex and competitive struggle in the emerging multipolar world order. And we often have to do this despite the dissatisfaction of the Western minority, which does not want to do this. And we have to respect all those who are ready to work on the platform of sovereign equality and other principles of international law. Most of these countries are our partners. They are reliable and promising. But the West has not yet got rid of the mania for its colonial and, I am not afraid of this word, slave-owning greatness. The dramatic events of the beginning of this year, including the armed invasion of the United States of Venezuela, the pressure of the U.S. on Cuba, attempts to destabilize the situation in Iran, the crisis around Greenland, you have all seen and heard about this, confirmed our assessment that the world has entered an era of rapid and very deep changes. Some experts even say that it is an era of tremors. Obviously, this is not a momentary phenomenon, but a new stage of world development, perhaps an era. This stage can last for many years, even decades. But the essence of this stage is clear to us, and we know that it is clear to all our political forces. The main tendency to become a more just and stable multipolar system will be accompanied by the struggle of the old, former leaders, who are concentrated, as I said, in the West, with the new gaining strength centers of development, which represent the world's majority. This struggle is gaining momentum and affects almost all geographical zones. If we look at the situation through this prism, it becomes clear why, for example, such a former colonial power as France is trying to overthrow its unpleasantly national-oriented government in the Sahara-Sahel zone and other regions of the African continent. These countries have long refused to focus on the former metropolis, but Paris does not back down and tries to rely not only on oppositionists in African countries, but also on openly terrorist groups and, as you know, on militants of Ukrainian formations. It is regrettable that the French elite continues to follow this colonial method, including the sad and well-known principle of sharing power, a principle that has already cost the African people millions of lives. Both Paris and Berlin do not back down. They are overwhelmed with revanchist fantasies. Otherwise, it is impossible to explain the statement of Chancellor Merz about the intention to make the German army the strongest in Europe again. The current generation of German, French, and other European politicians has clearly forgotten about Poltava, Berezina, Stalingrad, Kursk-Duga. Optimism is not added to the complex situation in the sphere of strategic stability, which is being degraded by a number of European Russophobes who indiscriminately blame Russia. Meanwhile, the initiative of President Putin on further voluntary compliance with the parties to the Treaty on Strategic Offensive Weapons, which included a central number of restrictions, was left unanswered by the American side. We assume that this moratorium, which was announced by the president, will be maintained, but only as long as the United States does not exceed the aforementioned limits. In general, we will act responsibly, based on the analysis of U.S. military policy, which we conduct on a daily basis, as well as the analysis of the overall situation in the strategic sphere. Against the background of the Russophobic hysteria that has engulfed Europe, it is noteworthy that the EU's position on Washington's claims to Greenland is frankly servile. As President Putin noted, we assume that this issue does not directly concern us. The United States, Denmark, and Greenland must sort it out themselves, taking into account the opinion of the residents of the largest island, which the official Copenhagen has treated quite cruelly for many years and decades. One might say, like a second-rate person. There are enough facts on this matter. Of course, in the event of militarization of Greenland and the creation of military potential aimed at Russia, we will take adequate countermeasures, including military and technical ones. Nevertheless, our principal position is that the Arctic should remain a zone of peace and cooperation. Speaking of Greenland, we cannot ignore the fact that, as in many other cases, the parents for peace and order based on the Western rules frankly applied double standards. The right of the Greenlanders to self-determination is recognized, while the right of the peoples of Crimea, Donbass, and Novorossiya to determine their destiny in unity with Russia is still denied. With such a perverted, frankly biased logic, which is categorically disagreeable, we will defend the truth and the right in all contacts with international partners, and we will provide diplomatic assistance to implement it. Colleagues, do we agree? We will provide diplomatic assistance to achieve all the goals and objectives of the special military operation. We constantly emphasize that the sustainable settlement of the crisis, which was provoked by the collective West in Ukraine, cannot be achieved without eradicating its root causes. Such an approach, as you know, was recognized by Trump's administration, and on this basis, during the meeting of the Russian and U.S. presidents in Alaska in August last year, an understanding was reached on how to ensure a stable, long-term settlement of the Ukrainian problem. This understanding remains on the table. We are grateful to the Emirati friends for their efforts, including the provision of a platform for the organization of negotiations with the participation of representatives of Russia, the United States, and Ukraine. Russian negotiators continue to work to ensure that the security of Russia at the western borders, the rights of Russian and Russian-speaking people are reliably ensured, and the threat arising from the current Kiev regime and its external patrons is eliminated. Colleagues, the approved President's foreign policy course proposes a resolute protection of national interests, the creation of favorable external conditions to ensure the progressive development of the country. I would like to emphasize that, unlike those who, according to Vladimir Vladimirovich, consider it permissible to dictate their will, to teach life, and to give orders, we do not threaten anyone. We do not impose our point of view on anyone. On the contrary, our diplomacy deliberately promotes honest, equal, and mutually beneficial partnership with everyone who is willing to cooperate with us on the same principles. An example of such cooperation, of course, is the friendly partnership with the People's Republic of China, our great eastern neighbor. Last year, as you know, our leaders, President Putin and Chairman Xi Jinping, exchanged visits that were timed for the triumphs in the name of the victory in the Great Patriotic War and the Second World War. The exemplary nature of the Russian-Chinese comprehensive partnership and strategic cooperation was recorded in the recent video conference of our leaders on 4th of February. The head of the Russian state accepted the invitation to make an official visit to China in the first half of this year. We will be actively and productively preparing for it. By the way, in just a few days, the entire Chinese people will celebrate the New Year on the lunar calendar, and it remains only to wish our friends that in the coming year the success of the Chinese nation on its way to prosperity will multiply. The development of our ties with the People's Republic of China has a stabilizing effect on the entire system of international relations, and at the same time plays an important role in the solution of the strategic task of forming the belt of friendship along the Russian borders. For this purpose, we are also contributing to the implementation of President Putin's flagship initiatives aimed at building an architecture of equal and indivisible security and broad practical cooperation on the Eurasian continent. This includes harmonious coordination of existing integration projects, the development of horizontal interaction along the lines of multilateral structures, and the creation of a comprehensive security system for all the countries of the Eurasian continent. Our concept includes those EU and NATO countries that will abandon hostile policy and recognize the non-alternative application of the principle of indivisibility and security, which was many times proclaimed in the European Security and Cooperation Organization, but has never been observed by the collective West. The Eurasian architecture, which has entered into force under the Security Guarantee Agreement with Belarus, and the comprehensive strategic partnership with the Korean People's Democratic Republic and the Islamic Republic of Iran. I would like to once again express our deep gratitude to our Korean friends for their allied assistance in the liberation of the Kursk region from the Ukrainian militants. Strengthening national security and maintaining regional stability contribute to the relationship of strategic partnership and alliance with our immediate neighbors, the countries of the Middle East, the CIS countries, the OECD. We will work to improve these relations. Good opportunities are being provided by the Russian presidency in the organization of the Security Guarantee Agreement this year. Among our priorities, which were announced by the President, are deepening of foreign policy coordination of the member states of the European Commission, promoting joint initiatives, and expanding contacts of the organization with international partners. Active diplomacy, including at the highest level, distinguishes our relations with many other Eurasian countries. In particular, a solid package of joint documents was signed as part of President Putin's state visit to India in December last year, a visit that enriched the Russian-Indian relations of a particularly privileged strategic partnership. The relations with the Arab world are developing rapidly. In January, the President held a personal meeting with the leaders of Palestine, the United Arab Emirates, and Syria. Multilateral cooperation unites us, Turkey, with the friendly states of South and Southeast Asia. An important and practical contribution to the promotion of joint initiatives in Eurasia is made by such integration unions as the Eurasian Economic Union, the SHUS, and the ASEAN. These three organizations actively establish useful coordination. A new high of the Russian-African strategic partnership prevails. In December last year, the second ministerial meeting of the Russian-African Partnership Forum took place in Cairo. This meeting and discussion demonstrated very good prospects for further development of our cooperation and coordinated approaches to the organization of the Third Russian-African Summit, which is scheduled for this year. In relation to the Latin American and Caribbean waters, I would like to note the intensive contacts with Brazil, which held a successful presidency in the BRICS in 2025. We highly appreciate the decision of the Sandinist leadership of Nicaragua to recognize Donbass and Novorossiya as an integral part of Russia. We are in solidarity with the peoples of Venezuela and Cuba, which, as I have already said, are under serious external pressure. We intend to provide our friends with all the necessary support, together with other like-minded people, with everyone for whom the ideals of freedom, sovereign equality, self-determination of nations, and democracy in international affairs are not empty words. It is these ideals that we focus on in our efforts on multilateral platforms, particularly within the framework of the BRICS. With our active participation, this union serves as a stabilizing factor in international affairs, a center of attraction for the states of the world's majority. Together with our partners, we continue to discuss and implement the initiatives that were put forward and approved during the BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, in the fall of 2024. One of the most important tasks of the BRICS summit is to build a platform for the unhindered implementation of trade, economic, currency, and financial investment relations, a platform that will not depend on illegal sanctions and other unfriendly actions of the West in violation of the norms and principles of world trade and international economic and financial relations. At the UN platform, communicating with our like-minded people through a group of friends in defense of the organization's charter, we are working to ensure that the principles recorded in this charter are complied with in their entirety, in their totality, and in their interrelationship, and not selectively, as the West likes to do. Today, the UN is going through difficult times and is experiencing all the severity of the deep contradictions that exist between the leading world powers. Nevertheless, it is impossible to deny the role of the UN as a platform for the coordination of state interests. We are determined to use the opportunities we have at the UN to promote Russian priorities. In December last year, the UN General Assembly, on the initiative of our country, approved the decision to declare the 14th of December as the International Day of Struggle against colonialism in all its forms and manifestations, and the 4th of December as the International Day of Struggle against one-sided forced measures. I have no doubt that this will give a new impetus to our joint efforts with many countries of the Global South on the eradication of modern practices of neo-colonialism and the creation of all-weather mechanisms of international cooperation that are resistant to the pressure of sanctions. I would like to highlight the role of the United Russia Party in the creation of an international movement for the freedom of nations in which supporters of the struggle against modern practices of neo-colonialism are involved. On the line of our ministry, we provide active support to the promotion of this initiative, which is gaining a global impact. An important measure of this initiative is the fight against the manifestations of electoral neo-colonialism. We support the efforts of the United Russia Party and other parliamentary parties in this direction, taking into account the relevance of the issue of ensuring an objective and unbiased monitoring of elections in friendly countries. This year, there will be a major interpolitical event. You are well aware of this, of course. The elections of the State Duma deputies and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will do everything necessary, as it was in the previous campaign, to carry out a clear vote in the electoral districts of our foreign institutions. Of course, we will assist in ensuring fair international monitoring of elections within Russia, including in Crimea, Sevastopol, Eleanor, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions. We are ready, as always, for close interaction with the leading political forces, the deputies, and the Central Election Commission. Returning to the UN topic, I would like to highlight the adoption of the traditional Russian resolution of the General Assembly on the fight against the heroization of Nazism in December last year. We continue to defend historical truth and to fight the attempts to revise the internationally recognized results of the Second World War. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the completion of the work of the Nuremberg Tribunal, in which the verdict of the war criminals of the Third Reich and their accomplices was passed. We will strive to ensure that the crimes of the Nazis and their accomplices against the citizens of the Soviet Union, and they have no date, are recognized by the international community as the genocide of the Soviet people. The relevant federal law, which sets April 19th as the Day of Remembrance of the Victims of the Genocide, is of particular importance in this regard. I would like to thank you once again for your attention to this topic. In the context of the confrontation with a variety of challenges and threats, I must mention the signing of the UN Convention on Cybercrime against Cybercrime at the meeting in Hanoi in October last year. This first universal international treaty on international information security was developed at the initiative of our country. We are interested in reaching a similar agreement with our partners in the field of artificial intelligence regulation, which is now being paid great attention to in our country. The President has repeatedly mentioned this, and in the leading countries of the world. Traditionally, we pay great attention to cultural and humanitarian diplomacy. In the broad sense of the term, we are working to strengthen the position of the Russian language. This popularization is aimed at promoting the activities of the Russian Language International Organization, which was established at the initiative of the President of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, and is supported by the CIS members. Soon, this organization will begin to function fully. Last year, at the initiative of our country, we resumed the practice of holding the International Song and Dance Competition. We will continue to support these and other initiatives aimed at developing contacts between people and mutual enrichment of cultures. In the first place, we will ensure the protection of the legal rights of Russian citizens and compatriots abroad, as well as the further consolidation of the multinational and multi-confessional Russian world. We are constantly monitoring the implementation of the President's decree on humanitarian support to people who share traditional Russian spiritual and moral values. Of course, our cooperation with the Russian Orthodox Church and other traditional confessions of Russia plays a special role here. In conclusion, I would like to stress once again that our foreign policy course, which is not conditioned by electoral cycles and personal preferences, will continue to have a predictable and long-term nature. Threats, blackmailing, and pressure from whoever they come from will not affect it. The tasks set by the President before the Foreign Ministry are really large-scale. We will continue to do everything for their successful implementation, ensuring our success and providing our society with high trust. On behalf of you, dear colleagues, I would like to thank the entire Deputy Corps for its comradely support and interaction in many areas of our foreign policy. Thank you. Thank you very much.